We now call this meeting to order. If you could please rise for the invocation presented by Councilmember Padilla, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Your Honor. This evening we have as our guest Pastor Pamela Hughes Mason. I met Pastor Mason on our trip to Chattanooga and got to know her very well, and I was excited that she was on the trip and was hopefully going to be part of our group here in Topeka, working now on everything. But we found out as of Sunday,
Yes.
she's been reassigned to be the pastor of St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church in Wichita, Kansas. The pastor has been in the ministry for 28 years, and been pastoring for 18. She is a retired special agent from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. She's also a vocalist and a lyricist. Too bad we won't get to hear that tonight. With having done 12 years in the entertainment industry. Please welcome Pastor Mason.
Let us pray. Oh God, we give thanks for this day. We thank you for those who have been called to leadership. We thank you, God, for their vision and their goals and their strategic plan. We thank you, oh God, for just the community. But now, dear God, we pray for vision. We pray for patience. We pray for insight and wisdom. We also pray for the community as they embrace the council. So now, dear God, we ask also that you would bless our leadership and that of our mayor. So now, dear God, be with us. Give us the mind to serve. This we declare in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry.
Don't try to get out of your way.
We have a fun proclamation. If Nicholas Saunders could join us. So the city of Topeka has never been one to be called traditional for many, many years. Home of Atchison Santa Fe and home of Brown v. Board and many amazing things. We actually called ourselves Google at one point in time. And that tradition is not going to change after today. We're willing to have some fun when some exciting things are happening. And there's going to be a slight change of name for just a few days because there's some cool things happening that I'll let Mikola talk about a little bit. But the proclamation reads, whereas Topeka is a vibrant, exciting community undergoing meaningful transformations centered around improvements of quality of life for all residents, including new places to play and things to do and ways to explore our community as a family. And whereas it was nearly 20 years ago in 1998 when Mayor Joan Wagner temporarily named our city to ToPekachu, Kansas in honor of the launch in our community of the Pokemon Red and the Pokemon Blue games, for the Game Boy, and whereas our residents, businesses, and visitors embraced the more recent Pokemon Go craze and continue to fondly remember the shared story of our history in this family and friendly fun, and whereas Nintendo is launching 2 new games, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, and will include Topeka on its 8th national tour as a stop, calling it the Pokemon Let's Go Topeka road trip. I now, therefore, Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby proclaim that on Saturday, October 27, 2018, we shall declare our city ToPekachu, Kansas, in celebration of this event. So, for nerds like me who played Pokemon Go, and actually I was part of the competition with Allie that had the most Pokemon collected, and the city of Topeka has the trophy of being the Pokemon champion. I'm pretty excited to see that Nintendo is taking a look at us. Hopefully you all Nintendo engineers get a chance of looking at how amazing our community is and consider bringing some of your talented business here to this community. So Mikola, could you talk to us about this?
Absolutely. So we're really excited. I work at Visit Topeka, and we're really excited to partner with Nintendo. They're actually bringing 2 trucks to the Topeka Zoo parking lot on Saturday. So if you're out there for Boo at the Zoo, you can play Pokemon too. These new games are for Nintendo Switch, and they launch nationally on November 16th. Like the mayor said, we're one of only 8 stops in a national road trip tour. The other cities were cities like Seattle, New York, and Topeka, because Nintendo remembers that we looked out for them and were the launch point in '98, and we're excited to continue that history. So you can go to visittopeka.com/ToPekachu, and it's just like you would think it as, 2 with Pikachu. And there's all kinds of details about the event there and the different businesses that were active in the Pokemon Go hunting. All of that is still going on. The zoo was an amazing partner during that effort with their safaris. And Nintendo knew that about our zoo. So it's really exciting that we'll have them here in Topeka. If you're out and about on Friday and Saturday, you'll get to see Eevee and Pikachu around Topeka and at the zoo. So it's just really exciting. It's completely free, and we really hope that everybody turns out. So
Thank you.
thank you.
So I think that we have to ask Mr. Wiley, is there a new exhibition coming in? Do we have a new Pikachu adding to our exhibition? We'll check out on October 27th when you go to the zoo. Thank you so much. We now have 2 presentations. The first one is the 2018 Utility Systems Update and Distribution Systems. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, Bob Sample, Utilities Director, will give a presentation related to our utility systems and provide us an update on our distribution system. Bob?
Well, good evening. So I've been wanting to come in front of council and just give an overview of the entire utilities department. But the problem I had was there's just too many moving parts to this department. So what I've decided to do is come in front of you with a series of shortened presentations and kind of section the department down where I can spend 7 or 10 minutes every couple months and just kind of cover and give you an overview of that section. So I'm going to try to do 2 things, just give the overview, but I also want to highlight an improvement that we're working on in that section. They're either working on or we've implemented. So that's kind of what my plan is, and if you're okay, I'll just get started here. So the first, I guess you might say, episode in this series, I'm going to highlight the water system. But even more specifically, the water distribution system. So we'll get started here. Just kind of as a review, our water system assets. We own 870 miles of water main, 10 water towers, over 15,000 valves, 8 pump stations, 5,000 fire hydrants, and over 57,000 water meters and 1 high-tech water treatment plant. And the total value of our water system equals over $1 billion. If we were going to replace everything on that slide, it would cost us over $1 billion. So with that, as I said, I'm going to break this down and just cover the distribution section. The distribution section is responsible for maintenance of our water mains, our valves in our distribution system, as well as our fire hydrants. So let's talk a little bit about valves in our distribution system. So we know there's over 15,000 valves. They really serve one purpose. When we get a water main break, we need to be able to respond and isolate that line segment where that break has occurred. So it's very important that, oops, sorry. Oh, sorry, my apologies. So it's very important that when we respond to water main break that those valves are operating properly. So valve maintenance includes exercising a valve, as you can see on the picture on the left. We have a gentleman there that's using a T-handle wrench that extends down through the ground, attaches to that valve, and then that operator can open and close that valve with that T-handle. Another part of valve maintenance includes repairing and replacing worn out valves. And the picture on the right shows a crew that is making a repair to a water valve. So fire hydrants, we all know the importance of fire hydrants. The distribution section also maintains all 5,000 fire hydrants throughout the city of Topeka. So maintaining a fire hydrant means replacing that fire hydrant when it's wore out or it's been damaged, but also just testing that fire hydrant to make sure it's operating properly. So part of that testing process is we actually test the pressure, and we also test the flow that goes through that hydrant when it's opened up. So once we know what the flow is, after we've tested it, then we actually color code the top of that fire hydrant, which we call the bonnet. So as you can see on the picture on the right, the employee is painting the bonnet orange. So what that means then, it gives quick reference that that fire hydrant will produce somewhere between 500 and 1,000 gallons per minute of flow. So if you look at the picture on the left, you'll see that the bonnet or the very top of that fire hydrant is green. So that would indicate that that fire hydrant then would produce somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 gallons per minute. It gives a quick reference to the fire department when they respond to emergency fire. Also, a function of our water distribution section is the inspection group. We inspect all water line projects. Currently, our inspection group is inspecting 10 projects right now. We have several projects that's in design and will soon be moving to construction, and then our inspection group will also be inspecting those. Now, probably the most visible function of the water distribution is the water main break repairs. So, once we get notice of a possible water main break, our crews respond. They immediately then investigate and confirm the break, at which point then they'll start isolating that line segment where that break has occurred by using those valves that I just talked about. The other thing they're doing simultaneously is they're calling for locates. Make sure that we don't have any underground utilities so that when we start digging, we don't hit. Once those two steps are complete, then our crews start the excavation process. So they dig down through the ground till they get to the point of that main where that break occurred. Then they actually enter into that excavation, make the repair, come back out, secure the area, and then move on to repair another break. While we're talking about water main breaks, I do want to show you this graph. So if you look at this graph, in 2018, we're at 724 breaks. That's more than we've experienced over the last 4 years. And that can be attributed to the drought conditions we've had this summer. Drought and dry conditions cause the soil to dry, shift, and it just plays havoc on a water distribution system. Repairing water main breaks are costly. As you can see, we spent approximately $3.2 million repairing water main breaks this year. So now that we have repaired 724 water main breaks, what that means is we have 724 holes scattered throughout the city of Topeka, unfortunately. So the next step in the process is the restoration process. So there's really two types of restorations. Breaks that happen in the dirt is called a dirt restoration. Breaks that happen in the pavement then, or that does damage to a pavement or a curb is called a pavement restoration. All pavement restorations are done by our contractors. Dirt restorations are completed by staff internally inside the city with our distribution group. So if you look at the very first two pictures, those were breaks that happened in the dirt. The very first picture then, as you can see, we filled the hole with dirt, then we compacted it, and then we put topsoil over the top, and then we raked in seed. The second one is also a dirt restoration, but we used what's called a hydro seeder. hydro seeder. This is a new process we started a month ago. And if you allow me to, I'll come back in a minute and talk a little bit more about that. Then the third picture is a break that happened in the pavement where a contractor had to come back in, repair the street and curb. So this has been a busy year for our distribution section. The needs have certainly outweighed our resources. So we've had to do some things differently. One of the things we've done is we've used contractors to help with water main breaks. And another thing we've done is we've reallocated staff within the utilities department to help cover the workload in certain areas. Now, I'll give you an example of that. About a month ago, we had a dirt restoration backlog of 140. So we reallocated, reassigned some WPC, Water Pollution Control Division staff for 1 week to work with water staff to tackle that 140 backlog of restorations. In 1 week, the group knocked that 140 backlog down to 9. So over the last 3 weeks then, as some breaks have come in, that backlog has increased. We went ahead and did the same thing last week. Okay, come back to the hydro seeding. So a hydro seeder is a piece of equipment, has a tank on it. In that tank, we mix a slurry of seed, water, tackifier, which is like a glue, a non-toxic glue made from plants. And then we also add wood fiber with a green dye. And so then that becomes a slurry. There's a pump that pumps out of that tank through a hose, and then the operator will then just spray that slurry over the area that needs seeded. And I think there's a couple of benefits to that. Number one, it's quick. Staff has shown that they can do 40 restoration seedings in 1 day. And the second part of that is it creates a better end product because it creates a mat and it holds the water in. And maybe the most important thing is when it rains, we don't get the erosion and wash the seed away and even wash the dirt down into the storm drain, which then could become a stormwater issue. So it's a project, it's a process we're working on. So far it's proven to be very good for us over this last month. As a matter of fact, I've got a 15-second video of a hydro seeder. Allow me to working. So that's the slurry in the tank, in the hopper. There's staff spraying the area that needs seeded. We don't work quite that fast. Fast, but not quite that fast. At that point, it's done. They move on to the next one. So, let's see here. So really, that is my presentation for this episode. I do have one more slide. It's an advertisement. I would appreciate your help in getting the word out. But starting in February, we're going to start a Citizens Utilities Academy. And I would like to personally invite any of you that would like to attend. It'll certainly be open to the public. Need to get this promoted. We're actually taking names and making a list right now. If you are interested in attending the Citizens Utilities Academy, you can email me at rsample@topeka.org or Ryan Woolaway at rwoolaway@topeka.org. So that ends this episode of the presentation. I'll stand for any questions.
Bob, thank you so much for that great presentation. I think that, one of the benefits that we have as sitting in this body is that we're constantly learning something new. And it's never our intention to micromanage what you guys do, but it's always really good for us to have a deeper understanding of your processes so that we could better advocate for you guys and maybe educate the public alongside you. So thank you. Councilwoman Clear.
I know this is a hard question, and I know there's a lot of different variables here, but what's the average time for a water main break to be fixed?
You're looking between 4 and 6 hours.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, well, and then again, there's a lot of variables.
Right.
If it's a big break, if it's one of those big transmission mains, 24 inches or larger, and it does a whole lot of damage in a street, then you could be looking up to 12, 14 hours. But a break that happens in the dirt, a routine break, we should be able to get in there in 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours, and get that repaired and move on to the next one.
And how many different color bonnets are there?
There are, and I thought you might ask that question. So there's a red, orange, green, and blue. So the red, if you see a bonnet that's colored red, that would be about 500 gallons per minute. Orange, again, would be 500 to 1,000 gallons per minute. Green, 1,000 to 1,500 gallons per minute. And then blue would be 1,500 to 3,000 gallons per minute. So it might be interesting just to keep an eye when you're driving through the
I
city.
never knew that. All right, thank you.
Okay?
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. Bob, I am seeing a lot of these water break holes in the street. How long are they, what do I want to say? I'm just seeing holes with the, the fences up and how long is that to be left open like that? Because it seems like I'm seeing more and more just open.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the high number of water main breaks that we've had, I can't put a time frame on that. We've got our contractors working full tilt to get those repaired. We'd like to be able to get in there within a couple of months and get that sooner. We'd like to get in there much sooner than that, but with the high number of water main breaks, it's just been a lengthy process.
So when my constituents call me and say, I have one on 11th Street that I've been watching, and it's been like that for months. Matter of fact, the barricades have been tipped over. I can tell them it's fixed, but we have to leave it open.
Well, the break would be fixed.
Right.
But the restoration has not. So really, what I would encourage them is to give us a call. And we'll give them personal attention and visit with them about what the schedule is and when we can be out to fix that. I'd be more than happy to take those phone calls.
Okay, I think I reported this one to Liz because it's been like that for a while. So when they see just the hole and nothing being done, there's a concern there, My concern is on the main streets is the safety is when, they're flying down Golden and they don't see that. So I just didn't know if you had a time frame, but so you're saying if it's over a couple months, then maybe we should report it again? Or
Absolutely. Or even before that, if they just want to talk and get a better understanding of where we're at in the priority of that repair, we're more than happy to come visit with them.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Bob, I've learned a lot since I've been on council about how long it takes concrete to cure and dirt to settle and things like that. I think pretty much everybody knows that with all the breaks this year, it's not unreasonable that you would get behind a little bit. But could you talk about what a typical turnaround time would be for what you call a restoration? I'll remember that. Including whether you come back typically and do each hole, finish the top of it and do the dirt work one at a time, or whether you batch them, so that we know what we can tell people even in terms of what your regular routine is.
Well, yes, absolutely. So one thing that I've found out this summer is that I could reallocate staff and I can get these restorations done much quicker. Sometimes those restorations will go out, will last 2 or 3 months. I visited one council member and I worked on one that had been out there for quite a while. So ideally, from a customer service perspective, I want to improve and get those holes filled up quicker. And so, first of all, when that break first happens, that excavation has to dry out. So you're really not going to touch it for a week or two until you can get it dried out to where you can get in there and fill it up. So I would like to be able to get back in there within a month in the future to get the restorations completed. But I know I've had some out there much longer than that.
And we all know that. I was trying to draw that out of you
Okay.
because I learned, about drying the hole, and then if it rains, once again, you have to let it dry out. And then typically the concrete style product that you use to fill it needs to cure for how long?
Well, if, then that also can play into a restoration. If it's done in the pavement, that backlog right now is fairly high because we're just using contractors.
But even in a perfect world, I'm trying to draw out
Yeah.
that you need 7 days to cure,
Right.
And so when people are calling us and saying, well, why isn't anybody there?
Yeah,
Even the routine could take a month to 6 weeks just because of weather and the curing.
right.
That's what I was trying to.
Yeah, but I think you bring up a great point. That's all weather dependent. If we get in there as quick as possible and make that, it's still weather dependent. If we get rainy weather, and we've had some of that, that slows down the entire project. But you're right, with a 7-day cure time, you're still looking at a repair in the pavement a couple weeks once it even gets started.
Thank you. I just wanted to
Yeah.
draw you through
Okay.
that because it really helps. And people understand, at least when I tell them that, it's like, oh yeah, of course it's water in the hole, things like that.
And don't hesitate to refer them to us, the Utilities Department. We're more than happy to visit with them. And we'll be covering all that in the Utilities Academy also, so.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So in the news, every now and then you see, huge articles about, oh my gosh, the city is running out of water capacity. Where are we within our capacity? I know our supply is good because it's the river, it's not a reservoir that'll dry up, but how much of our existing distribution network, what capacity level are we at there?
Capacity is not an issue with the city of Topeka. Antiquated infrastructure is, but capacity is not. We could produce a lot more water at our water plant and push it through our distribution system. So capacity is not an issue.
Excellent. So if a
Not at
manufacturer
all.
wanted to come in and use tons of water, we could easily handle that.
Well, yeah, we'd sort of have to look at where
Well,
that's
sure,
at.
you have to
and-
build infrastructure,
Right.
but our ability to produce water is.
Is there. It absolutely is there. But still understand, though, our big issue is our condition of our assets.
Sure.
And the deferred maintenance piece.
Do we have a lot of that? Is more of that at the water plant or in the distribution network? Or is it a combination of both?
With
With
condition.
aging infrastructure?
It's in both areas, both water plant. Of course, the distribution side is much more visible, but we're working just as diligently on the water side with aging infrastructure.
But you don't foresee any of that impacting our ability to distribute water at this point outside of, breaks and that sort of thing?
No, and we're still going to be able to produce the quantity of water we need.
Excellent.
We have to do some adjustments within our treatment plant, but from the quantity standpoint, no.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, thank you so much,
Thank
Bob,
you.
for your great report. Next, we have another presentation with regards to Clean Slate Day. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm excited to hear the presentation by Judge Fischel. We went through a process of Clean Slate Day, and I believe it to be very successful based on the numbers that I've seen, and so I'm excited to have her have the opportunity to present that to you. So, Judge?
All right, good evening. So this is your annual Clean Slate Day report. September 21st this year, we held Clean Slate Day. It was a pretty good success. I want to run through just a little bit of it for the members that weren't here last year. Our Clean Slate Day is a day that we can come in and have defendants recall warrants, set new court dates, arrange for payment plans. There's some limited resources that are available for financial assistance. And then we actually have a resource fair. This year we had over 15 vendors in that resource fair. So when they were able to come in, they were first vetted through the line to make sure that they weren't wasting their time. They didn't have something that was actually for district court. So we had volunteers go through the line outside before they even got in to make sure that they were here for municipal court. When they came in, they were printed off a docket sheet, and it would have the stations that they needed to go to. So we really this year tried to streamline where people were going. Last year, one of the biggest complaints we had was how long it took. It still took a long time, don't get me wrong. People were here anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. So there was a lot of downtime for them. And so we're continually looking at how can we make this process better for them. And we did find that printing off the docket sheets for them helped, because when they came in, if they had only cases in collections, then they probably want to go talk to the collections people to see what's going on with that. If they just had a license suspension question, they could go over to Department of Revenue and see what cases do I need to pay off first in order to get my license back. So that really helped. And then at the same time, if they were interested in getting that financial assistance, we qualified them through the guidelines to make sure that they met the financial assistance cutoff. And if they did, they were given a card. This year, we did receive a grant from the Topeka Community Foundation. They gave us about $3,700, which was fantastic. We were able to use that for court costs, fees, reinstatement fees. So unfortunately, that money goes quickly. And it was on a first come, first serve, but just because we ran out of the grant money didn't mean we couldn't help people with other court costs and fines. So that was kind of what we did at the very beginning. Our statistics. So the total number of attendees was down this year. We went from 700 last year to 428. But our points of contact actually went up in every single station that we tracked. So I'd like to think that we're becoming more efficient. This was our third year. People are starting to realize what we do and what we can't do. So we didn't have perhaps as many looky-loos as we have in the past. And we do know that we had 428 come through, and then 384 were given docket sheets. So these are people that had contact with a station, usually multiple stations. For the first year, we had Collections Bureau of Kansas here, who has the contract for the municipal court collections. So people were able to go to them, see what they have in collections, could they get set up on a payment plan, and if they could, they can either start it there, or they can set up an arrangement to have that start in a few months. They were also able to let them know, hey, case 18, whatever, is suspending my license. I want my payments to go towards that case first. So they were able to talk to them in a manner that, you get an unexpected phone call, it's collections, it's usually not super pleasant. This way they knew what was going to happen. They made the choice to go up and talk to them. Our Department of Revenue was also there for licenses, and so that was our biggest increase. Last year they had 191 that they assisted. This year we had 248. So that was a huge difference for us, and they were able to tell people whether or not they would be eligible for restricted license. They could come and take care of a case with a judge that was suspending their license and potentially get a license that day. We did have several people that they couldn't get it that day because we had to issue a paid in full letter to them. So the next day they were able to go down and get their license. So that was helpful to them. Our expungements stayed about the same, about 83, other than we had an additional 11 set for motion hearing because it wasn't something we could handle that day. There are certain requirements, a little bit of research we had to do into those cases. We also had more people seek out legal advice. We had the Washburn Legal Clinic, had 4 of their interns come and assist us, so that was really nice to get our local law school involved. We had our court-appointed attorneys who were there, and then we had just a couple people volunteering to help out with that. The expungements, our city prosecutor's office was also there, so they were helping people with the petition and doing some of the background research for the judges. Our warrants recalled went up also. We went from 130 to 157. People are really understanding that we are not going to arrest you when you come to Clean Slate Day. We want to help you. We had somebody call the Friday of, are you sure you're not going to arrest me? Because I've been hiding out all week to make sure that I won't get arrested. we're like, absolutely not. Calm down, get your warrant recalled, we'll get you reset. But they literally stayed home for a week because they missed their court a couple weeks beforehand. Also, for the first time this year, we did settlement requests, so somebody could come to us and say, I've racked up all these fines, I'm having trouble paying them, what's the mandatory minimum? And so we couldn't address those that day, but we took those requests back. Everybody who requested a settlement has been sent a letter that's, this is the mandatory minimums that we need to collect, this is what we can do for you, let us know if you're interested. We've actually had 5 people since then take us up on that offer. We had several people take care of their cases altogether. They did their plea and sentencing that day. Oddly enough, our pleas and sentences and our payment plans remain the same from last year. And then our new court date set skyrocketed. It went from 67 to 195. So we had lots and lots of people resetting their cases. And actually, my staff is slammed this week because this week is 30 days out from Clean Slate Day. So all of our dockets are just filled with Clean Slate Day people. And we actually had our largest docket this morning of 99, and we had a 60% appearance rate. So that's really good. People are coming in to take care of their cases that have been pending. I had 3 people that had cases from 2015. So they are taking care of business. This has given them the opportunity to do that. So what was our impact? We waived approximately $12,000 in fines and court costs between the 2 judges. We used $2,700 from the donated funds from Topeka Community Foundation for the fines, court costs, and reinstatement fees. So our total impact between what was waived and what was paid through these donation funds was $14,650. Our staff time, we had 56 city employees assist with this day. There were 22 from the municipal court, 25 from neighborhood relations, and 9 from the prosecutor's office. That doesn't include the amazing volunteers that we had assisting as well. But in staff time alone, we spent about $10,000. And then there were other miscellaneous fees, the rental for TPAC, volunteer shirts, some food to keep everybody awake and energetic. So in total, it was about $26,182 between what was waived, what was paid, and what was spent in staff time. So this was a huge impact on our community this one day, and there were so many planning sessions that led up to it. Monique Claudet, Sasha Hahn, Denise Vaughn, all every Friday for about a month, and then a couple Fridays before that. So they really worked hard. Coran Thadani, with the chief of prosecution, just made sure his staff knew exactly what they needed to do so that we could run this very smoothly. So it was a huge impact. So we had some success stories that I wanted to share with you really quickly. We had 22 defendants that were issued their restricted licenses the same day. And what that means is they can go to and from work, school, medical appointments, court appearances, probation, drug and alcohol treatment, or anywhere required by the court. So that's 22 people who walked in without a license and walked out with a license. So they're not going to be picking up driving while suspendeds anymore. It's huge that they were able to do that. And like I said, there were several people that, even though they couldn't get a restricted license that day, because they cleared up a case with us on Friday, as soon as we issued that paid in full letter, could go and get their license reinstated if we were the only ones suspending them. We had one defendant who came in to see what she needed to do to get a reinstated license. She knew her license was suspended, and she found out, oh, hey, by the way, I have 2 active warrants. So we recalled the warrants. They were cases that she could take care of that day. She went and saw some of the court-appointed attorneys, figured out what kind of pleas she wanted to do, and she took care of everything. She didn't have to worry about whether or not she was going to be arrested. She didn't have to worry about what was going to happen. She didn't have to come back. She's not one of them that had to come back this month. She was so pleased with it that she wanted to volunteer next year, so we have her on our list of volunteers. And then finally, we had a defendant who drove over 130 miles to come take care of a case from 2015. It was not a case he would have been suspended on, but he did have a warrant on it. He was out of state. He knew we weren't going to extradite him out of state. It just would have been an inconvenience that every time he got pulled over, he would have had a warrant out of Kansas. And he said, if you guys didn't have this day, I wouldn't have even bothered to take care of it. There was no reason for me to do so. He waited quite a while, but he did manage to get it taken care of before he left. Our partners in Clean Slate Day, our city prosecutor's office, our local attorneys, the Department of Neighborhood Relations, and then our volunteers. We had volunteers from all sorts of community organizations, and it was just amazing. We even had our city manager there directing traffic for a while. And then these are all of our exhibitors from the resource fair. So next year, we are going to do it the third Thursday in September. So that's September 20th. We have changed the time from 9 p.m. Try that again. From 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We've changed it to 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Our staff was actually here until 7 o'clock that night. We didn't get the last person out until about 6:30, and so it was just a very long day for everybody. So we had people lining up at about 5:30 that morning. So we think we can go ahead and get started at 8, start getting people through that line, and hopefully get everybody out in a timely manner. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise...
Judge, I think it's amazing how you have continued this legacy, and I love how you've started to tweak based on things that maybe were not being done. Is there any one service that you've seen in the last few years that maybe we could be adding for next year that you think that we're needing, or do you think that we're there with regards to the services that we're providing?
So we just had a debriefing meeting about 2 weeks ago to see what we can do. I think we're about capacity for the number of stations we have in that main hall. Department of Revenue actually wants to bring additional staff next time. The biggest backup was with the judges. We had people that were there at 9 a.m. that they were leaving at 5 and 6:30 with us. So we're going to try and have a third judge there next year. We're going to have a pro tem come in and perhaps work through some of the easier cases and just see if we can get people through a little bit more quickly.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
So first of all, I just was blown away that day when I came by to see it. It was just an incredible operation, very well-oiled machine. So my question is along the lines of the mayor's is, if you can scale this, what resources do you need from us in order to do so? The pro tem judge, is that, I want to say rented judge, but I'm told that's not correct. What other resources do you need that we as a body could provide in order to scale this up and help you affect more people? Because it is a very positive thing, I think.
It is, like I said, the financial assistance does go quickly. Just because it's gone doesn't mean we can't assist people. So, I mean, there's always that where there are certain things we cannot waive. Mm-hmm. There's certain mandatory minimums that we have to collect. There are certain fines that we must collect. A perfect example is a no insurance charge. By statute, it is a $300 fine on a first time, and on a second, it's $800 fine. We can't waive that.
Sure.
So that's something that if we've run out of Clean Slate Day funds, there's nothing that I can do about that. So, I mean, there's always the financial aspect.
So what's a number for that would help you? Is it just more money, more help, or is there a realistic ceiling to an amount of money that could help with that? Or do you know?
I don't know,
okay.
And I'm sorry I don't have that answer for you.
Well, my proposal is going to be next year that we make this a line item in the budget and that we contribute some funds to that as well. So what I would encourage you to do is at some point before we start talking about the budget next year or year after, you might work with your staff to try and come up with a number, because I would wholly support putting some of our resources behind to help. Because, I mean, this is taking people out of a hole in our community, and it's only going to help make Topeka better.
Councilmember Mays.
I think this is great. I have a quick question about the expungements. It said you did about 80 some odd expungements and then started the process for about, would you say like 11, I think is what it was?
Yes, sir.
How does that process work? I mean, are there people that don't realize they're eligible for an expungement and you come in and say like, hey, maybe you ought to think about this? Or are they people, that's the reason they come in? Because I feel like sometimes that's the difference between somebody getting a job and not getting a job down the road.
So everything that we do on Clean Slate Day, you can do every single day in this court. Most people don't know which cases are eligible for expungements. And so if you go onto our website, we actually have a link that will let you know, hey, if you have a no insurance case, you can move to expunge that after 3 years. If you have some other misdemeanor, it's 3 to 5 years, depending on what it is. So if you go onto the website, you can look that up. A lot of people don't realize that they're eligible for that. And so Judge Knoll and myself make sure to announce it during dockets that if you are convicted, you are eligible for expungement. Please let us know if you have questions about that. Our court-appointed attorneys, and I'm sure the privately retained attorneys also will go through that, but people just forget. And so it's something as simple as a no insurance. It's a Class B misdemeanor on your first one. It's a Class A misdemeanor on your second one. And so if somebody on an employment application says, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor? You have to say yes. So a lot of times people just don't realize that. There's also the hurdle of the filing fee. To file for an expungement in the Topeka Municipal Court, it's $100 per case. We waive that during Clean Slate Day. If people fill out a poverty affidavit or they have an indigency affidavit and they file that along with their expungement, most of the time we're going to waive that filing fee. If people aren't aware of that, then they'll see that and say, I've got 5 cases I need to expunge. It's going to cost me $500. I'm not going to bother. So you can do everything you can in court every day that you do at Clean Slate Day. People just don't necessarily realize it. So with the expungements, especially that hurdle is the filing fee.
Okay, thanks.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
First, I want to say thank you for all your great work. I went to BP before work and I couldn't get in. There were so many people over there, so I just left, and then they were telling me what was going on. Is there any way, I know we try to take care of them that day, and in your streamline, is there any way that we could give them like a red ticket that they can come back? So, at a different time to, if they can't stay all day. I know that's a complaint that I heard is we couldn't stay all day, so we left. I mean, if they qualified or something in the streamline, and maybe some people would come back, during the next 6 months or whatever. Because I know our goal is just to clean it up or to help them. Have you thought about that?
So it's kind of twofold. My understanding is they tried to do a ticket system one other year and it went badly. People got out of line and...
No, I mean, like when you're screening them, so I'm going to screen Sandra and I know that, I probably can't get to her, or just to streamline the number, but give her a red ticket and say, bring this back and we'll help you on another day that it's not so congested for you.
So if people just wanted to set up a new court date to take care of a case, they could do that. They did not have to wait in line. What they could do is say, I want to set up a new court date. We sent them over to a clerk who would fill out the notice of hearing for them, have them sign it, and then they were free to go. So we did. So
they would come back. So you had that in process.
Yes, that's our week this week with all of our really large dockets.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So most people got a new court date set 30 days out, unless they were a motion, and then we tried to set them a little bit sooner. But yes, they could say, I can't wait today, I just need to have a new court date. So we sent them over, got them taken care of. It took probably half an hour because there was quite a line.
Right.
But yes, they were able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, thank you so much for your work. We appreciate you and your staff and everybody who gave up their time to volunteer to serve our community in this fashion. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you.
Before we proceed with the roll call, I will say that I did receive a message from Councilman Emerson. He will not be with us tonight, but we will see him during our next scheduled meeting. We now proceed with the roll call.
Councilmember Hiller?
Here.
Claire?
Here.
Ortiz? Here. Emerson? Padilla?
Here.
Jensen?
Present.
Mays?
Here.
Cohen?
Here.
Lester?
Here.
And Mayor De La Isla.
Here. We now move on to item number 4, appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Marilyn Lynn to the City of Topeka ADA Advisory Council for a 2-year term ending October 1st, 2020. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Craig Strever to the Board of Mechanical Examiners for a term ending November 1st, 2020.
Body, we have these reapplications in front of you. The mayor does not vote. We have a motion by the deputy mayor.
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilmember Cohen. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. Is Mr. Strever here today? I don't think he is. And I know that Ms. Lind was unable to make it. She is not sighted and she needed some transportation today. So we appreciate their service to our community and everything that they do to help improve our city. We now move on to the consent agenda. Item A, if the clerk would read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of September 1st, 2018 through September 28, 2018, and enumerating said expenditures therein. B is minutes of the regular meeting of October 9, 2018, and there are 2 open after midnight license applications before you. One for College Hill Pizza Pub located at 1418 Southwest Lane Street, and the other is Iron Rail Brewing at 705 South Kansas Avenue.
We have the consent agenda in front of us. We have a motion by the deputy mayor for approval. We have a second by Councilmember Mays. Do we have any comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on into the action items. Item A, if the clerk would read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout authorizing initiation of condemnation proceedings to acquire fee title and a permanent easement for construction of the Soldier Creek Booster Pump Station Project Number T281091.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body, tonight is the next step related to the Soldier Creek Booster Pump Station eminent domain issue. If there are questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
There is no questions, it seems. We have a motion for approval by Councilmember Cohen. We have a second by Councilmember Padilla. Again, the body has an opportunity to have any comments or questions. Seeing none, we proceed with the voting.
We have 8 yes. 8 yes, Councilmember Jensen voting no.
8 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout setting the public hearing for improvement project number T-601101 Phase 1 to provide street construction for Aquarian Acre Subdivision number 9.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body, tonight you have before you a request to set a public hearing date. This is in relation to the improvement project that will be done in Aquarian Acres. The developer has complied with all of the new standard requirements for our ordinance related to this type of project, and so we would recommend that you approve setting a hearing date, and we'll consider it at the, where's the date? December 4th meeting.
Do we have any questions with regards to this item? Deputy Mayor?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval, and we have a second by Councilmember Cohen. Are there comments or questions with regards to this issue? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
C is approval of a 3-year labor agreement between the City of Topeka and Teamsters Local Number 696, representing street maintenance employees.
City Manager?
Mayor governing body, tonight you have before you a request for approval of this contract. We discussed the terms of that contract during the closed session, executive session at the last meeting, and we have a request for approval.
Deputy Mayor?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval by the Deputy Mayor. We have a second by Councilmember Padilla. Any comments or questions from the body? Yes, Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Manager, was this the one that we were talking about where, you know, the sustained growth would be unattainable if we continue growing at that particular rate?
Right. We looked at some of the issues related to the amounts that were there. We feel that there are some concerns as we go forward in the outer years that will need to be addressed related to this. But this is the project also that we looked at with the dollars that were there, with the starting wages and so forth. This was important for us to move forwards towards approval of this level of contract. This also is motor fuel fund versus general fund, and so we'll be looking at that fund related to these particular increases.
Thank you.
Additional comments from the body or questions? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item D. If the clerk would read.
D is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, repealing ordinance number 220, which established a community improvement district for the Cyrus Hotel and levied a CID sales tax of 1% within the CID.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Governing body, tonight I'd like to have Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber cover the information related to this particular project and explain what actions we're taking tonight.
Governing body, good evening. I won't belabor this and break the string of easy agenda items so far. What you have is an ordinance which repeals a 1% CID for the Cyrus Hotel. As you recall, I'm sure, about 6 weeks ago, you passed an ordinance that actually implemented a 2% CID at that location. And it doesn't make sense for us to have a 2% and a 1%, so we need to repeal the lesser amount. Then both of those will become effective on January 1st, 2019. I'd stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Oh, we have a motion by Councilwoman Ortiz for approval. We have a second by Councilmember Lesser. Any comments or questions with regards to this item? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 voting yes, the motion passes. We now proceed to item E, public hearing ordinance, if the clerk would read.
E is a public hearing and ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, establishing a neighborhood revitalization area, adopting a neighborhood revitalization plan, and authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal cooperation agreement with other municipalities pursuant to the Neighborhood Revitalization Act, KSA 12-17-114 et seq.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, governing body, this information, we have to have a public hearing and then consider approval of the ordinance for the neighborhood revitalization plan. One comment I will have is that we did receive a letter of support from the Greater Topeka Partnership today, which I'll forward to you later, that supports this approval. It is a very good economic development tool, especially for our underserved areas, our lower income neighborhoods. This gives them the opportunity to locate businesses there that may not otherwise consider their location in the neighborhood. So I feel strongly this is an important economic development tool and request your consideration and approval.
So at this point in time, if legal could assist me with this, we now enter the public hearing session of
It's called for the public hearing.
Exactly.
And then ask if anyone wants to comment.
So we are calling a public hearing and we're establishing it as open. So if there is anybody that would like to make any statements with regards to this plan, anybody in the crowd, you're more than welcome to step up and address specifically this issue. And as I have been taught, I have to call once. We're calling for comments twice. And we're calling a third time. Seeing that there are no comments, the public hearing is now closed. So body, we have in front of us this item. What is the pleasure of the body? We have a motion for approval by Councilmember Padilla. We have a second by Deputy Mayor. Are there comments or questions for staff? Seeing none, we proceed with voting.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item F, if the clerk would read.
F is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning special use landscape requirements, amending City of Topeka Code Section 1860-010, 18-225-010, 18-230-030, and 18-235-060, and repealing original sections.
City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, we heard a presentation last week from Director Finder related to the changes that we're looking to make in our zoning code related to both our landscaping and screening standards and also the next item, which is our non-residential design standards. That information was pretty thorough, and I hope that you've had time to think over that, and please give this some consideration for approval. We feel like this is a step forward with regards to how we do business, giving them the opportunity to propose alternatives if they don't meet requests in certain areas. So Mr. Finder is here and he can answer any questions if you have it.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Body, do we have any questions of our staff? Deputy Mayor.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval. We have a second by Councilmember Lesser. We have comments by Councilmember Hiller.
I had a question that came in from a constituent that I didn't have time to run prior to this meeting. Hopefully Mr. Finder
Bill, would you please come?
could answer. In particular, the constituent was concerned about trees and wanted to know that the ordinance is not specific, but concerned about trees that grow tall underneath utility lines. The person was concerned about trees, and in particular, ones that grow tall under utility lines and then have to be sawed off, sometimes just half of them, by Westar, and also about different types of trees. We've learned along the way not to plant solid rows of any particular kind for disease resistance and so on. And he wondered if review and commentary about that was part of this process, or if not, who did it, if it's done at all.
Councilwoman Hiller, this doesn't change any of the current process, so let me explain. The current process is to absolutely take those sort of things into consideration. When we do a specific site, we take into consideration, are there utility lines overhead that would dictate a different type of tree? We also have principles in the ordinance already requiring or not requiring a monoculture of landscape plantings, so you have varieties. So those are the things that we emphasize in the review. The type of tree, depending on the site and what's overhead, and then also getting a variety as well. We would agree. So this doesn't change any of that. That would continue to go forward as we currently do.
Thank you. My constituent thanks you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hiller. Additional comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. From time to time, I'll get a comment or two, Mr. Finder, that, working with planning and stuff is always difficult. There's always some surprise of something that we didn't disclose or we didn't, whatever. And I'm just wanting to make sure that if we implement something like this, that it doesn't make opening a business any more difficult than it already is, getting the door open.
Well, Councilmember Cohen, I would say that in this particular case, we are clarifying a few things that are right now a little more loose. For instance, we emphasize plantings along street frontages. Well, that's a bit of a gray area when it comes to put forth a landscape plan for us to review. So this quantifies a minimum of landscaping along a street frontage, which helps the applicant know, okay, what's my starting point at least? And I think, in my experience in working through the rules, it's not so much the rules, although we need reasonable and flexible rules, but it's knowing those and being clear about those up front. And if consultants and developers go in knowing what the rules are, knowing the rules of the game, if you will, then they can much more easily deal with that, as opposed to what you kind of described, which is creating something midstream or downstream that is sort of a surprise. That is a no-no for us. That is something staff and I have worked on to try and everybody, that's why we try to do those meetings up front, get our standards clear up front. And if somebody's getting told something further down the road that was different than what they were expecting, that is typically on us, that we did not communicate well or our standards were not clear. So we're trying to clarify some of that here in our landscape code, and as an example. Okay.
Councilmember Lesser.
Hey, Bill. Question for you. You and I worked a little bit on the landscaping issue that we had up there with the movie theater, up there by Red Robin. And thank you for that. You and your staff did a great job of reaching out, doing that. And anyone who had been up there, I received numerous phone calls of dead trees, no mulch, et cetera, and you guys did a fantastic job following up with them to get that resolved. Does this ordinance put any more teeth into giving you the ability in the future to enforce 5 years down the road if something is not kept up to par? And if not, if it does, can you explain it? And if not, do you feel that we have adequate teeth, for lack of a better term, in there?
Good question, Councilman Lesser. We don't put any more teeth into this proposal before you. Our current teeth are just our ability to go out and inspect on a more periodic basis. That is something, actually, although I think we started this before the movie issue came up, but so we've started a more periodic inspection that had been curtailed or paused for quite a few years, but now we are, with the help of some interns, we and our staff, we are going back out, doing some inspections of the landscape plans that were approved a couple, 3-4 years ago to make sure they're still alive and fully planted. So no, we have plenty of teeth to enforce. In fact, every time we've run up against people needing to comply with with their landscape plan, we haven't had. The only issues we've had is waiting to make sure it's planted during the season that's most appropriate. So it may not get put in this month or the next month, but by spring it would be something we would expect to be in. So no, we do have what we need. We just need to inspect periodically.
Great. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just a quick comment. I think you did a fantastic job with this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we have a motion and we have a second. I think at this point it's appropriate to move with the motion, with the vote.
Councilmember Jensen. We have 9 yes.
Nine having voted yes, the motion passes. We now proceed to item G, if the clerk would read.
G is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, creating Chapter 18.275 of the Topeka Municipal Code concerning non-residential design standards.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, governing body. I don't really have anything additional to add related to this item specifically. My comments would be similar to what the last item was. So, thank you.
Does the body have any comments, questions? Deputy Mayor?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by the Deputy Mayor. Do we have a second? We have a second by Councilmember Lesser. Do we have comments? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. As I said in the earlier session, I'm really appreciative of the work that was done on this one, and I also appreciate the reassurances that this is not going to cause extra time or difficulties for the applicants, the best anybody knows. We did have one aha out of the trip to Chattanooga last week that about half of us were on, and that was the investment to great benefit that they had made in art installations, public art, in the downtown of Chattanooga. They are doing some requirements on some projects that a percentage of like a 1% set aside be spent on public art, but otherwise it's happening through those projects and otherwise. And that public art, as we have embraced it here, is making a big difference in the feel and the success of their downtown. They are just taking off. So when I came back, I read the ordinance again and realized that there are, I think, let me count, if somebody can't meet the design standards, this ordinance that we have before us provides 9 alternatives to kind of make up whatever that shortfall might be. But interestingly enough, they all have to do with parking or landscaping, and art, doing an art installation of some sort is not an alternative. Particularly, and then because that's happening in other cities and here, it seemed to me that art ought to be an alternative. Further, as I thought about my district, when you have downtown, or what will be emerging as the riverfront, or city installations like on Southeast and Southwest 6th Street and Noto, where you don't have the examples in the ordinance had to do with a new building, freestanding building with a premises all the way around it and a parking lot. But when you have a more urban situation where you don't even have any grass at all, and you may not have any parking, and if you do, it's out back, the alternatives that are listed here don't work for those buildings. I talked with Bill about simply adding in line 110, where it offers the addition of integrated planters, landscaping features, or wing walls. Obviously, you don't have room for a wing wall either. I'm not sure exactly what one is, but I assume it's extra. But to insert in that line addition of integrated planters, landscaping features, art features, or wing wall compatible in design and scale to the building, would just insert and introduce art as an option. I think that we could pass that today. All of these are subjective in terms of what the planning staff is coaching and deciding would work. But I also respect that Bill's preference was to, at this point, allow the staff to tell people that it was okay within landscaping, which I think is a bit of a stretch, and no one would know it to look for it. But I'm okay with that, as long as we could task the staff to research and be comfortable with language that would insert that into this ordinance. So I would like to propose with that then, again, that's going to be really significant as an alternative for our downtown type situations. With that, I'd like to propose an amendment that would simply add an addition to the motion that's on the table. And that would be to amend it to add language that would additionally request the staff to research and develop language for adding art features as an alternative.
Could I please, if the body would not mind, consult with legal with regards to this item?
Yes, Councilmember Hiller asked me before the meeting if it would be okay if the suggestion was made to approve the ordinance and then request that staff run this kind of idea by the Planning Commission. It's fine as long as we do not the motion does not include amending any portion of it, because if we amend any portion of it, it has to go back to the planning commission, requires 7 votes. So I think that perhaps if you make the motion to pass the ordinance, that's fine, requesting that staff talk to the planning commission, but not refer to it as an amendment in any way.
Correct. It would just be an amendment to the motion, not an amendment to the ordinance. Just to add that language to our
To the
motion.
original motion that was made. To ask staff to just go back and talk with the planning. Okay.
Okay, so for those of you that are watching at home, what the request is that we pass the documents have been presented on the website. However, that the motion language include that staff would have the opportunity to go back and see about including the language of art with the planning commission. If we amend the packet that we have here, we cannot do this because it was approved by the planning commission. So it would have to completely go back as a packet to the planning commission so that they could do the changes that need to happen. So we have
Need a second.
we have a proposed amendment. And at this time, with the amendment, we need to find out if there is a second. There is a second. So Councilmember Jensen approving the second, that means that our motion, we now have to vote on whether the change in the language is going to be approved. So if you have any comments with regards to the change in language of the motion, this is the time to speak up. Councilwoman Clear.
I guess just procedurally, help me understand why we have to say that. Why can't we just go to staff and say, hey, will you do this? Why do we have to actually add that?
Councilwoman Hiller.
I felt like we needed to do it just to get it on the record that we request, that we seriously wanted them to look at that.
Okay, because I don't see that as necessary. We just ask them, we all hear it, it's on TV. Okay.
My statement with regards to the amendment is the fact that I am very concerned of the fact of what art means. I know that the best intention that we all have is a beautiful piece, a conversation piece that would add to our community. However, the consideration of what is art from one individual to another varies greatly. And if we are trying to ensure that businesses are able to, work on a standard, then we're then therefore putting our staff in a position of becoming art curators for our community. And I don't think that that is the heart of this. The intention is fabulous, though. I think that it is very important, and the city of Topeka has already demonstrated in many ways that we are very passionate about the arts, and you see it in every corner. However, I am deeply concerned with regards to the position that puts our staff of having to set standards for what art is, and that becomes a very complicated issue. Councilmember Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second your concern. Well, I do view very many, quite a few of our art projects, whether it be statues, whether it be paintings, what have you, that I find very appealing. I find them as a positive influence on our community. Quite frankly, and then there are other ones that I just flat out don't. And my main concern is just fundamentally in this area where we're talking about having the staff, if it's windows, is it doors? My concern is the same as the mayor's. Art is subjective. What one person sees as art, another person does not see necessarily as art. And while I support all the beautiful different piece of art we have around, and I think that we should continue to do that, I don't know that in this is the place that we should use that. So I would not support actually making it part of the document. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
So I have a couple of questions and a comment. My comment, first of all, is I do understand with everyone's concern with art, because art is definitely in the eye of the beholder. However, we don't define what art is now, and yet it's all over our city. So my question is, what is the process by which we're approving public art installations now, murals, that sort of thing, because that's already happening. And we're not advocating for changing the existing process that's already in place to approve what's being done now. So I guess I don't understand why giving somebody the option to run an existing process to do something that's already being done now, why that would change. My second point to that is, you could almost apply the same thing to landscaping. There are certain types of trees that I just don't like. I don't think they're attractive. I wouldn't want them in my yard. I wouldn't want them in my neighbor's yard. So if we're going to get into the point of being subjective like that, well, now we have to go back and revisit landscaping. Maybe I don't want pine trees as part of a screen from a street. So I think we're kind of on a slippery slope there. So if somebody could answer the question for what do we use as the existing process to approve public art installations now? I mean, obviously you can't just go out and start putting something up. I feel like that might help everybody's comfort level with this, because and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Hiller, but I haven't heard you ask to change the existing process by which we use to approve art. And my assumption is this would apply to that process would apply to anybody who wants to do that as a concession agreement now.
City Manager.
I'm not sure that I can answer that question, because there hasn't been a project that I've worked on personally related to that. I don't know if Mr. Finder or Mr. Peak related to our approvals for right-of-way art and pocket parks and whatnot.
And a quick follow-up for you, would that not be approved by the planning department anyway?
Well, strictly speaking, for a private development where we are requiring them to do something, X, and they come in and they say, oh, instead of X, we're going to do Y, which would include art, and then we have to, that has not happened. There's no process currently, because that's not an alternative to even approve. So we just haven't had that.
But how would somebody come in and get art approved now? For example, all of the Washburn Ichabod statues that are all over the right-of-way. How did that process get worked, and would a similar process not apply to somebody who wants to do art as a concession that would then be in the right-of-way?
That's not something the planning department approves. So I'm at a loss to say how it is approved.
So people just can put statues up all over the right-of-way? I mean, somebody has to approve this, because it's our property.
Yeah. City
And the
Manager.
right-of-way would be different. We would be managing what we're putting in the right-of-way, what we're allowing there, and the process that's handled in order to consider that. On their own personal property, as Mr. Finder's saying, we're not regulating that. So if you wanted to put a statue in front of your business and it was not on the right-of-way, then you would be able to do that.
So if you wanted to augment a design standard with a landscape, then that augmentation has to be approved, correct?
The landscaping portion does get approved.
Right. So an art installation would also have to be approved too, correct?
So people can do more than so we're talking about the minimum.
Right.
And so if somebody brings us a alternative compliance with some landscaping and a fountain with a statue of themselves on it, is that will enhance the site. Is it prominent? Is it permanent? And I guess you'd look at that and say, okay, that meets that. In our judgment, that meets the minimum, because you're not doing something else. But if they're doing everything else, and they want to do a statue above and beyond what the minimum is, we don't approve. We wouldn't approve that. We would just approve that it's in lieu of something else that is required, and that can be that could be a challenge. It also could be fairly reasonable to see. So we just don't know.
So it sounds like we need to approve this and go ask the planning department to sort out what we think is reasonable or not.
Councilwoman Hiller had a response.
Well, that was the request. But, because we do have public art all over the place. We have it in right-of-ways like the Ichabod statues. We have the painted electrical boxes, which were okayed by the electric utility, but we're happy about them. We have murals all over the place. And so those are great augmentations to what somebody has already done with the building. They do make a difference in how the community looks. Conversely, to a certain extent, you talked about the decision-making with art. There are some objective requirements for design and for landscaping, and then that is subjective now, and we've approved that. What I go back to for those structures where the structure comes right up to the sidewalk, or otherwise they don't have exterior premises to work with, for those structures that I'm talking about, they can't do excess landscaping because they don't have any anyway, because they can't plant any trees in the first place. They can't do additional parking lot islands because they don't have a parking lot that's big enough to have islands with trees in them. They can't do landscape screening of a blank or under-designed wall because the wall is right up on the sidewalk and covering it up won't work. They can't do an addition on the front of their building that is an entryway that's at least 8 by 10. I'm now to the fourth. They can't they might be able to add some integrated planters if the sidewalk is big enough to allow. I mean, I have downtown, I have College Hill, I have 6th Street just in my district, and the prospect of developing the riverfront again. So looking at what's there and what would be developing. Again, no additional landscaping features if you don't have anything to landscape. No wing wall if you don't have room to do that because you're a side-by-side building in a streetscape. Number 6 deals with parking located to the rear or the side. If you're not going to have a parking lot, that doesn't work. Bringing existing signs into compliance on the property, or putting a monument sign instead of a pole sign, not an option when you've got a storefront on a sidewalk. A minimum of 20% higher percentage of required windows and doors, somebody maybe could. But again, if their preference was to have a more solid wall and put a mural on it, why shouldn't they be able to do that? And then additional required architectural details, they could probably do. So I was just looking at not only the idea of art and the fact that maybe we don't want to get into the business of passing judgment on it yet as an option for somebody with a brand new building or 50% rehab. It seemed like it would be reasonable. Hence then my proposal not to try and nail that tonight, pass what we have, but since there is a gap there, to ask the staff, my language was to have the staff research and develop some language for adding art features and alternative. Doesn't even mean we have to pass it, but at least to have them look into it and come up with something at a later date to look at.
Councilmember Mays.
So I'm actually kind of supportive of what you're saying here. I think this gives another option to developers that we can add some creativity. I guess what I'll say though also is I have a little bit of a problem with a take it or leave it approach to this. That if the Planning Commission sends us something that we're not able to alter it. I don't necessarily agree with that interpretation. My understanding is they make recommendations to the governing body, and we can approve, we can change things. And if that is the case, I think what I would prefer to do is amend it and send it back to them rather than voting on this tonight and have them decide if they're going to accept our recommendations to them. But I don't, the notion of voting for something with half a promise that they might look at this later, I just feel like there's too much uncertainty there, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Okay, so right now, yes. Attorney.
Mayor and Councilmember Mays, absolutely, that's one of the things that you can do. It's just that the deputy mayor had a motion on the floor to approve it. And when Councilmember Hiller asked me about it, she had said that she wanted to ask staff to research it and look into it further. So if you all want to amend it, that requires 7 votes, not 6. Has to go back to the Planning Commission, Absolutely an option.
Okay, so the motion that we have right now is a motion to amend the language of the first motion, which says that we would request of staff, rather than just approving what we have in front of us, that we would formally request of staff going to the Planning Commission to look at adding this language or do research, okay? So we now proceed with the vote. Councilwoman Ortiz.
But I guess I'm not quite understanding how that would be an amendment when we could just remand it back to the Planning Commission to look and then say why we want to remand it back. That wouldn't be an amendment, that'd just be saying that we want to send it back and this is why, and then they're going to look at it and then they're going to send it back to us.
That's another option, Councilmember Ortiz.
I think that's more.
Reject it, amend it, or remand it.
I think that's clearer, Karen, is to remand it. I think that's, because when we start saying amend, I think people are going to start looking for those amendments in that document, and they're not going to be there, and everybody's going to say, well, that's what we, I think we remand it back, and then we say why.
Okay. Before we do that, we have to work with the motion that we have in front of us. So this is the point in time, again, that we vote on the amendment of the language that Councilmember Hiller proposed.
Mayor, I don't think there was a second to the motion to amend.
No, I was the second.
He was the second.
Okay.
There was a second. Okay.
Let's follow this backwards here. Yes,
Councilmember Hiller.
Thank you. So what we have now is an amendment that could be voted up or down.
Correct.
Or withdrawn.
Correct.
If there's a sense that people would like to send this back to the Planning Commission to consider, what do we need to do? Like withdraw both motions and start over?
At this point in time, we would have to vote up or down this first motion, or you, as the person that brought the motion forward, have to withdraw it, and the second has to approve that it has to be withdrawn. Then we have to deal with the first motion that we had on the table, which was for full approval of what we have here. At which point you can offer, once we vote down the second motion that you made, we could then proceed with you providing a friendly amendment to see if the body votes on the friendly amendment of changing the motion, or seeing if the individuals that made the initial motion want to withdraw their motion so that we can start from scratch. Sorry for the complications at home.
I just wanted to double check where I'm fine with withdrawing the proposed amendment.
So we have withdrawn the second motion, which was an amendment to the language. So now what we have in the table is we have a motion for approval of the documents as received.
So I will withdraw my motion to approve it and then make a subsequent motion to remand it back to the Planning Commission to review the opportunity to augment it for public art and then provide a set of recommended design standards.
Okay, we have a motion, and I'm certain that we have a second for that, or?
I'll second it. Let's go. If you're not here.
My preference would not be to include all the language about design standards. We don't have that for the other things. So
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
if it could just be to remand it back to the Planning Commission to consider adding language about art features, that leaves the slate open for them.
And then they could in turn, correct me if
Order.
I'm wrong. Okay,
Deputy Mayor.
so then they could in turn provide us something that has that if they so chose?
Right.
That's fine.
So I would second it.
Councilwoman Hiller, yes.
Second it if the motion is just to remand it back to the Planning Commission to
Right.
look into the,
And we'll hope and pray they give us what we need.
okay.
Order again. Councilmember Lester.
Quite frankly, again, I think you are giving them an impossible task that I do not know that they can accomplish. And while like I say, the beautiful statues we have on Kansas Avenue, the Eisenhower statue that just came, the beautiful murals we have, but you're also going to ask them to somehow regulate whether the other ones that I drive around where people have sticks with empty wine bottles hanging out of it, whether that's art or not. And that's not what this is for. I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't think that they can accomplish this task, quite frankly. Thank you.
So at hand, what we have is a motion to remand and send these documents back to the Planning Commission. So seeing that we've had plenty of discussion with this item, we either now vote this item up or down. Voting this motion down would mean that I think that we would have back on the floor having the motion whether we approve it or not, correct? No?
Good.
Okay, so we proceed with voting.
Councilmembers Hiller and Lesser. We have 6 and 3 no. Mayor De La Isla, Councilmember Clear, and Councilmember Lesser voting no. So it did not pass.
So the motion does not pass. It requires 7 votes. At this point in time, we either, Deputy Mayor.
In the past, when something has failed, it's dead. Why is it not dead this time?
You can reconsider.
This is just the motion.
It's just the motion.
But this was the only motion. We pulled back all the other motions.
City Manager.
Given that it did not get the favorable motion or favorable votes in order to remand, I would request that you approve this, and I'll work with Bill and we'll work with the Planning and Zoning Commission in order to go through and see what would be possible related to the art standards. I think that's been a desire by some, but we've done some good hard work here. I would really like to go ahead and move forward with this. We've heard you, we've heard what the requests are, and we can work with the Planning Commission to go through the process to consider an amendment to this at a later date, because the art feature one will require a lot of discussion and is going to be very broad, and we're going to have to do some serious research to determine where other cities might be doing this type of thing. So I would really ask for your strongly ask for your consideration of this. Go ahead and approve it, and then we'll bring something back to you at some point.
So my question's not been
Deputy
answered.
Mayor.
So we had a single motion on the floor and we just voted it down. So this should be dead. My fear is that it'll get nullified later on because we voted improperly a second time on a dead issue. There was only one motion because I withdrew my initial motion and then made only a motion to remand.
Legal?
Deputy Mayor, if there's many times when folks will make motions and they'll vote and it'll either be favorable or not. If it's not, someone will make another motion. I think you can do as the city manager suggests and make a motion to approve if you wish. You can make a motion to amend if you wish. You can make another motion.
Okay, because in the past, when we've done this in other places, it's failed, it's dead for 6 months, and I don't want to kill it.
Councilwoman Hiller.
I'd have to look at the book for the technicalities, but my recollection from Robert's rules is that you can have a motion to reconsider at the same meeting.
Okay.
And so if we need to, what I can't remember, when you have one like this, who the prevailing side is, because nobody really prevailed. So if we could just do a.
It's got to be Mayor De La Isla.
Okay.
Or Lesser.
That's where I'm asking.
So if we can have a motion from the previous.
It was to remand.
If we need a motion to reconsider, if we don't, then let's just do it.
I think we do.
Order. Councilwoman Clear.
I make a motion to do whatever we need to do to reconsider this and vote.
Motion to reconsider.
On the, being on the prevailing side, I would like to reconsider my vote.
Not to remand.
Okay, so we have a motion for reconsidering the packet for approval. Do we have a second?
Yes.
We have a second by Deputy Mayor. I think that we've had great discussion with regards to this item. For the individuals that are watching at home, the commitment that staff has made is there is a request for us to approve this package. Staff has put a lot of work into this. The commission has put a lot of work into this. However, staff is making a commitment that they are going to work with the commission and with staff to ensure that we eventually come up with some policies or some standards that would pertain to art in our right-of-ways.
Time out.
Okay, city manager.
Okay, so attorney went and looked a little deeper here. What we have is actually remand. I was looking at reject, which requires 7. Remand actually only requires 6 for approval.
Okay.
So-
Adoption or remand are 6.
So
And
I was looking at
reject.
reject, not remand.
7, okay.
My
So
apologies.
then the motion did pass,
Yes, ma'am.
and it is now remanded to planning. Okay, so no further voting needed tonight. Technicalities. So that being said, we have concluded all of our action items for the evening, and we now proceed with announcements. City manager, oh, actually, we don't have a meeting next week, so therefore there's no, in 2 weeks, so city manager.
Right, our next meeting will actually be November 13th. The next 2 weeks, we will not be meeting. Oh, I gotta turn on my mic. The next 2 weeks, we will not be meeting. Our next meeting will be November 13th. It will be a little fuller agenda than normal, based on what we're looking at right now, given that we have 2 weeks off. So a couple of announcements I have. First one is our first Landlord Expo will be held this Saturday at the downtown Ramada from 9 to 3. Any landlords or property owners that are interested on the commercial side, come down. We'll have a lot of resources, vendors, and others, and we'll have some classes that'll be free in order for them to participate in. Also, our Neighborhood Relations Citizens Advisory Council will hold its first annual Neighborhood Celebration event also this Saturday from 11 to 6 at Cushenberry Park. So if you're interested, please come and participate there. My last announcement that I have is the governing body is aware, but I just want to recognize Nikki Lee for her work that she's done with us over the last few years. She's leaving for another position. I want to thank her for that effort. And so, thank you, Nikki.
Nikki, on behalf of myself and the work that you and I have done together, you have been a breath of fresh air. One of my favorite Nikki Lee stories is that when Nikki, and she's laughing because she's like, I can't believe you're going to say this in public. I'm a numbers person, and we had a very lively conversation in which she was just like very passionate about what she was doing and making sure that those numbers were being presented right. And Nikki stood her ground. And I remember going back to the past city manager and telling him, ooh, I like her. She's got spunk. She stood up to me. I love it. So, Nikki, thank you for your service to our city. We've had amazing CAFRs under your leadership. And for those of you that are out there, those are our annual reports and audits that are very looked upon. And when you talk about transparency of a city, what people really are talking about, it's not just the policy decisions, but it's where our money is going. And our money was in safe hands with you. The city that is of Smithville, which is where you're going, will gain an amazing employee. And just know that Topeka will always consider you one of our daughters. That being said, we went to Chattanooga last week. And for those of you who have never experienced going over there, I tell you what, it's a pretty cool city. I want to thank the mayor who was welcoming of us, and also in addition to that, the staff at their chamber. The leaders in our community who participated were second to none. It was wonderful to see the camaraderie that was occurring. Your council members were really good. There was media present, and your council members all hung out in different pods. So there was no violation of what we were supposed to be doing and how we were supposed to conduct ourselves. We saw a lot of things, and the message that I bring to you, my community, after seeing this is we're such on the right track. There's so many things that they were talking about that we were kind of ahead, and there were many things that we were like trailing behind them, but we were all sharing the same momentum. And Topeka was not trying to be Chattanooga. Topeka was trying to learn about what the process is and what the key points were of turning things around. I will tell you that as a mayor that has done a lot of work in the area of diversity in this community, it was amazing to hear how many people stood up and talked about diversity and inclusion. and what diversity means, and how do you make sure that every single person in the community is represented. So we had some really rich conversations, and I thank the people that were talking to us, because we had some really vulnerable conversations. Because when we talk about diversity, nobody wants to do it wrong. And sometimes because we don't want to do anything wrong, we fail to talk to each other. And when we fail to talk to each other, we perpetuate stereotypes and we don't come together. So we talked about how things kind of get messy, but we need to keep on going. And I was very proud of everything that we are doing as a community. So thank you to our hosts in Chattanooga. Thank you to Visit Topeka, Brett Otting and Matt Pavarnik and his team, and Amy McCarter, who did a phenomenal job in organizing the event. Thank you, Pastor, because you were there as well. And it was refreshing to see you there. Thank you to the council members who represented your city so well. And your city manager and the staff that went there did such a great job of making sure that the city of Topeka was represented with the cream of the crop. So that being said, the last thing is it was amazing to be at the Vallejo Unmasking Stigma, where the first humanitarian award was granted to none other than Chief Bill Cochran. So if we could recognize Chief Cochran. Chief Cochran was recognized because of the wonderful work that he has been doing on our force to ensure that we have a mental health unit and that we have individuals in a partnership with Vallejo that we don't think that there is one in the nation that is as tight as the one that we have with Vallejo. Most of our officers have significant training. I think it's 40 hours, if memory serves me right, of training with what we call the CIT, which is the Crisis Intervention Team. And that wouldn't have happened had it not been the brainchild of our chief of police right now. So just keep providing them support. Thank you so much for what you're doing for our community. Councilman Padilla.
Well, I can't follow much on that about Chattanooga, but I have to admit that it was refreshing to meet everyone there. Thank you. And it came to my mind that, like you said, we went there to learn. But I think we were in pretty good stride when we got there. I think Topeka is doing some pretty good things on their own. And I think that just helps reinforce what our efforts are. I want to thank also the sponsors who helped us get there, the corporate sponsors who provided the opportunity for us to go there. It was really a good experience. Moving on to the next thing. Tomorrow, I would like to, on behalf of Mana de Topeka, invite the mayor, Councilwoman Ortiz, actually anyone, to attend a training session at the Law Enforcement Center. It starts at 5:45. They have national representatives coming in from the national organization. They're presenting a new savings program for youth and adults, and they're doing it in cooperation with the Zura Banking. They're part of that, and they will help establish accounts for those who wish to have them if they don't already have them, and will match monies that go into those accounts. So it's really a good opportunity for the city to take advantage of another corporate citizen like Azura in partnering up with Mana de Topeka. And again, thank you for Mayor for asking us to go along, my fellow councilmen. We had a great time, and it was really a privilege to go, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
So it's hard to follow you guys on the Chattanooga comments. I looked at a lot of the entrepreneurial stuff they're doing there and how they have public-private partnerships around working with individuals who want to expand a business or start a business, and how if you have an idea, it's really one-stop shopping. How do you get involved with people that can help mentor you, help get you the space to get started, connect you with resources, that sort of thing. So it really is quite the place to go and start a business. I think we can do the exact same thing here. We've got nearly all of the pieces around the community. It's just a matter of a little bit of final assembly. So I think we're on a great track. It was an incredible event. I was particularly excited to see people from completely opposite ends of our community sitting over there in the corner talking about how they could partner to accomplish great things in our community. And that is the unsung hero of these inner city visits, is just you put people in a room that would never speak to each other, and let them figure out how to work together. And there are some incredible partnerships I think will come out of that trip, and I'm particularly excited about that. I want to publicly thank you, Brent, for allowing so much of the senior staff of our community to go on this trip. Of all the ones I've been on, I think this was the best attended by city staff, and that's an excellent thing for two reasons. One, again, people in the community that will never get the chance to interact with the staff in the community, the staff of the city. Again, they were there, they were over in a corner chatting with people about how the city and local partners can partner together. So I want to commend you for that effort, and I appreciate that you've done that. I hope to see that again in the future. Have a great week, everybody.
Councilman Mays.
I'd echo that sentiment as well. Thanks for bringing the staff. So I got a chance to go to my first Pilots game this week, and we had a blast, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same as often as you can. Tickets are pretty cheap. I think it's like $10 for like the good seats. And so, I mean, there's no nosebleeds at the Expo Center, but I mean, it was a fun time, a lot of fun. Also, one of the things that I wanted to just kind of touch on real quick is coming back from the Chattanooga trip. I was also a part of the entrepreneurship and all of that. One of the things that we kept hearing was that they had some wealthy benefactors in their community, and so I'm hopeful that after tonight we'll have a billionaire in Topeka. The Mega Millions tonight, I wish everybody luck, and I hope that if you do win, you stay in our community and reinvest those dollars. Thank you.
Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a good one. I'll be buying my ticket on the way home tonight, and I'm sorry if I don't show up the next time.
Get me one.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of us can't go to Chattanooga because of work, and I think there's been a couple of trips that I've had to turn down, and I'd like to hear some of your reports on some of the biggest takeaways that you had, some of the things that really impressed you the most, and I think some of the things that we've already talked about. But people outside of this room, I mean, we'd like to hear what our community leaders thought about the things and the changes that they think we could do here to make our community better. So that's just my request. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Cohen. Councilmember Lesser. Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'll first chime in a little bit about Chattanooga too, and everything that you all said, I reiterate. Couple of takeaways were regarding broadband. There were some sessions regarding broadband at first, and something they've done is dubbed themselves Gig City, which is pretty slick and has helped them, I think, sell themselves to both businesses as well as prospective residents. They talked a lot about attracting people to the city. However, that said, we had all of our utilities represented, the electric utility, the gas service company, Cox, and AT&T. And so before the end, Gig City, meaning that they were a 1 gig, the whole city was covered with 1 gig, and before we got done, our gals had to stand up and point out that we are also already a 1 gig city. And so those kinds of things happened all in really a positive way, but it was very affirming, just as an example. Something that did come out, I already mentioned the art that they are doing, and the city was just gorgeous. But it seemed that as people went around on their various, we had some breakouts, and so people split up into 5 groups. We had some general sessions as well. Something emerged was it seemed like with what we'd seen and what we'd done before, that the stars were sort of aligning, that people were ready to really move the riverfront here. And so I don't want to speak out of turn, but it really seemed like that was emerging out of the trip. And last on the trip, there were all sorts of cool restaurants that have popped up all over. There was somebody who'd done an urban redevelopment very similar to what's happening in downtown Topeka with the Cyrus, and then all the different eateries and night spots that are related to that. They'd done it with a vacated office building that had been a Blue Cross building that's now a very high-end Westin. And we're developing, and bought the blocks around it, and we're developing the businesses there too. And some of us took some pictures that you can see on Facebook, or maybe we can put something together. But I remember somebody in the wrap-up commenting that it was really cool, maybe it was you, Mike, though, that you could actually make money on a business that specialized only in tequila and tacos. So it was quite a varied cuisine. Nikki, I can't see you very well, but it's really hard to have a goodbye party for you because it's hard to let you go. It's been great to have you, and so best of luck to you. Speaking of congratulations, our own Mike Lesser ended up not going, in part because he was awarded the Kansas Agent of the Year by the Kansas Independent Assurance Agents Association while we were gone.
Big Mike.
So congratulations. And then I do have one more thing, and it's on a little more serious note. And this is a communication from me, and also on behalf of my constituent, Steve Leffler. And Steve lives at 1204 Taylor. And you may remember that about 2 weeks ago, there was quite a fire at 1200 Taylor, a vacant property, that also burned his house. He could have died, and his wife and the grandchild that was with them, if somebody hadn't seen the fire and come and knocked on their door. Could have died. A little bit of backstory on that is Steve is a great guy. He's a businessman, he's a contractor, has built and rehabbed houses. He actually rehabbed the house on Beverly Court that got shut down within the last year or so because of the activity of the occupants. He's a super guy. He bought into Historic Holiday Park, which his house faces on, about 15 years ago, and rehabbed the house that he's in. That's a neighborhood that a lot of people have reinvested in, put their own time and money in. He also, though, backed on to 715 Southwest 12th, which went through years and years of code stuff and vagrants getting into it, and eventually was sadly torn down. It was a historic fourplex that those of us who were following that regretted seeing go down, and has had to live next door to 1200 Southwest Taylor, which has been vacant for some years. The plea is to continue working on what we have been, to make sure that these houses that code compliance is comprehensive and timely in terms of getting those houses addressed so that they're secure and rehabbed. Our code compliance has made a lot of progress. We need to keep working on that so that houses like 715 and 1200 don't deteriorate the way those did, with good people living next to them in any neighborhood in town. Also, that 1200 finally got to the point where the taxes were 3 years in arrears, and most people know that that's the trigger for them to go on the tax sale. The neighbors in that area, just like in other parts of town, kind of circle around and try and make plans for how to save a house. It's a historic district in that case, but in most neighborhoods they do. Everybody thought it was going to be on the tax sale last year, and it didn't go. We found out later that there are 2,000 houses on the list for that tax sale, and the county at the time said they didn't want to do more than one a year and didn't really know about that one. And in fact, we're letting properties in our neighborhoods, in our older neighborhoods, sit for another couple years so that the dollars owed went up a little bit. They actually told a resident of the neighborhood that, and they told me that when I called because they couldn't believe it. So that house sat a year longer than it needed to in terms of the tax sale. It did sell this year, but they take 6 to 10 weeks to transfer title, and I'm not sure it was actually fully in the hands of the new owners. And so there's a limbo period between that tax sale. They actually give the new owners a piece of paper that says, don't do anything on the inside until you get the title. And that is just scary. We had a lot of them in my district. So I would hope, at one point we had the county saying that those tax sales are expensive, they didn't want to do them more than once a year, and they do have to do a lot of due diligence on the properties. I hope that we as a city could encourage them to do one twice a year at least anyway, to help with our priority properties. They actually made money on this one. A lot of people were interested in it, so maybe with the profits that, would help budget-wise. And we also need to, if we could ask them to do everything they can to expedite those title transfers so those new owners can get in and start working on those properties. They are ready to go, and then they get told to wait. And last, maybe we could consider an ordinance regarding owner responsibility and fines just to keep properties secure. Obviously, that house was vacant, so somebody was in it and set that fire that could have killed these responsible neighbors. We do have some elements in our property maintenance code that lets the code compliance people go and the police go to secure them. But similar to how we have an extra charge if there's a false alarm on a security system, if there could be an extra incentive perhaps to make sure that the owners, not the police or the city, but the owners are taking responsibility to keep these properties secure. Actually, in the case of a transfer, that would mean the county needs to do it, and whatever it takes so that we can keep our people safe. Steve wanted to come tonight. He thought about it, and he just was afraid he'd lose it. And I told him I would share that message. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Claire.
Is Nikki still here? Nikki, you here?
Yeah, she's just behind that computer.
I remember when I came and we were going to do the budget, and I thought, I'll never get through this because I don't understand numbers. I'm not good at it. And you made it so easy. Be a teacher if you can't be anything else. That was great. And as your mayor has said all month, don't forget to vote. Vote, vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to the city manager for helping out with Clean Slate Day. I was trying to figure out on the video if you were the one that needed the license or the gentleman next to you.
Not
so, that says a lot for you. I stress to people when the head will come down and serve, that says a lot to your staff. And so I want to seriously thank you. I know that's a tough job. So thank you. To Nikki, good luck, Nikki. I have sat in this chair for 13 years, and I've seen a lot of budgets, and I actually promised her an old budget book, and she said, yeah, I'll take it. I want to look at it. I want to see the books were this thick, and I still have one at home. I'll try to get it to you. But she was welcoming to it, because I used to ask her what's missing, because we went from this thick to this thick, But I have to tell a little Nikki Lee story. I remember when I met her, and I thought, I'm going to see how well she knows this budget. So I asked her questions, and she was popping off numbers and the right numbers. And I thought, she's pretty slick. But one time she couldn't. She said, but I'll get back with you, Councilwoman Ortiz. So I'm sitting here in this spot, and all of a sudden I get the answer no longer than probably about 3 minutes, and I'm getting the answer to the question, and I couldn't believe it, and I'm like, look at her. So here's your answer, blah 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 blah, and I just got so tickled because most of the time I get them the next day, but it's been a pleasure. I'll miss you at budget time because you know those answers and you know where they're at. So I hope that Nick gets what you got. I hope you leave him with that, and I hope that you've done a good job here. We're going to miss you and those little Liettes, so come back home anytime. And good luck to you. And Sandra was looking at my paper. I was going to tell everybody to go vote, but she looked at it, so she told you guys.
Yes. Voting. Todo el mundo vote. We have 2 individuals signed up for public comment. The first individual signed up is Greg Inkman.
Good evening, Council Mayor. My name is Greg Inkman. I'm the president of the Foundation for Aeronautical Education, a 501c3 here in Topeka, and we use the excitement of model aviation to interest youth and adults in aviation-related careers, science, technology, and all the other components of a STEM system. STEAM system, well, STEM. The reason I'm here tonight is because we are having a
speak to the microphone.
Speak to the microphone.
Thank you.
The reason I'm here tonight is because we are having a free radio-controlled aircraft fly-in air show this Saturday from 1 through dark. It'll be at our flying field, which is just north of the Sardu Bridge. The public is welcome. And I have flyers that I'd like to pass out to everyone for that, and I will mimeograph. Boy, that shows age, doesn't it? Lost my head there. Basically, it's a free public radio-controlled air show from 1 through 6. We will have daytime aircraft flying with smoke, sound. We will have nighttime flying with LED lights, which is something really fantastic if you've never seen it. We have a meal available, $5 for adults, $3 for kids, and if you walk away hungry, it's not our fault. We will have plenty of food for you. It's a real deal. We're going to have a free raffle at 6 p.m., a free raffle. We're going to raffle off 2 complete radio control systems. We're going to have a flying witch, free gliders for the kids at 5. So this is really a family-oriented, and the purpose, along with just having the excitement of the air show, is to get youth and adults outside, real-time experience, and also the science and education that goes along with it, which we kind of slide in when the youngsters are having a good time. Our organization was started in 2003. We are a member of the Academy of Model Aeronautics. That's a nationwide organization of radio control enthusiasts, helicopters, drones, free flight, U-control, radio control, all aspects. It has been authorized or recognized by Congress as a community-based organization across the United States, and the FAA actually listens to what our organization says in this as we go weave our way through this UAS business. They provide us with educational and safety standards, and we commit to that because safety is a prime part of what we do. What I'd like to do too, I'm sure there's stuff I've forgotten, but basically I brought tonight a tool, and it may look like an airplane, but it's actually a tool. And I'm sure that all of you remember from school that a pound has 16 ounces. I mean, even I know that. The harder question is, and the kids get blank when I ask this, how many grams in an ounce?
You still have 1 minute.
Okay. How many grams in an ounce? Well, I had to look that up too. And to save any embarrassment, it's 14. Excuse me, there's 28. Shh. So 28 grams in an ounce. This aircraft weighs 14 grams. And if the council would be amenable, I'll demonstrate it for you. So basically, it's a lithium polymer battery, a transmitter, plug in the aircraft, and we have lights, so this is flyable at night. New Year's Eve at midnight, we are down at our flying field. We fly at midnight, weather regardless. And we had 5 guys flying these. So basically, you have elevator, rudder, and a throttle. So when I do this in a classroom, the kids are transfixed. And so we talk about lift, and we talk about drag, and we talk about Bernoulli, and all the other elements of science that go into this.
Thank you so much.
So please come down and enjoy the fun. The weather report looks good at this point. Please, God.
Sir, we have to wrap up. Your time has
Okay.
expired.
All right. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
You
This
bet.
was an exciting one.
He did that all in 4 minutes.
Yes, that's impressive. We have one more individual to sign up, and it's Mr. J.W. Benning.
Council members and Madam Mayor, this is nice and simple. I need somebody in this city who can make an answer, either yes or no question. I'm tearing the trees down at my house so I can bring my trailers home. And nobody give me an answer. Can I park on the other side of the street where it says no parking? I only be there for a couple of days. I can't park in the alley because the old dog came me walking up and down the hill. The old dog is tired. I can't park in front of my house because they got, it's blocked off. They're taking trees down there. But all I need to do is park there for a couple of days so they get the trees down, and I'll put it back where the vehicles belong. If I can't put it in my driveway, my truck is too long. I got a Mega Max, Mega Cab, and it sticks out in the street when I put it in the driveway. But I went to the police department. They sent me to 620 Madison. They sent me to the third floor. Third floor sent me to the second floor. The second floor sent me down the hall. Then they told me they might have to go to a committee meeting. And all I want to do is park there for a couple of days, and then that's it. But the only person make a decision in this town is the way it looks like is just you people. The departments don't want to make no decisions, so I come to you people, ask can I park on the other side of the street for a couple of days.
Sir, what we'll do is, we're about to adjourn the meeting. I will have the city manager directly talk with you so that we could get your situation solved.
Oh, it's nice and simple. It only takes yes or no. It's real simple.
And we will get you that answer really quick. As soon as we adjourn the meeting, you will have immediate, the city manager is the final decision with all staff issues, and he will give you the answer and the support that you need.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Having no additional public comments, we do have one executive session. We will recess for 5 minutes before we go into executive session to allow for city manager some time to talk to our constituent and to just have individuals vacate the room. So do I have a motion by the city attorney could read the parameters of the executive session?
Motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 15 minutes for consultation with legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters related to tort claims as justified by KSA 70, to discuss consultation with the legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters not related to a tort claim as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber, Administrative and Financial Services Director Nikki Lee, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
We have heard the parameters. Deputy Mayor, motion for approval. Councilman Cohen seconds the motion. All those in favor, please vote. Please vote. Executive session, I already go into the...
We have 8 yes.
8 having voting yes. We now will take a 5-minute recess and then we'll engage in executive session. We have concluded the executive session. No action has been taken. We now call this meeting adjourned.